Hi, I'm Hal Roberts. This is Bridge City News. Here's some of the top stories we've been following. The Conservatives' new interim leader blasted the Trudeau Liberals for not meeting with the Freedom Convoy truckers in Ottawa. The mandate protest continues at the Coutts border crossing. We hear from both police and supporters of our truckers. And the cauldron was lit as the 24 Winter Olympics have begun in Beijing.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. Interim Conservative leader Candice Bergen asked Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland why the Trudeau Liberals have not extended an olive branch to the truckers who are participating in the Freedom Convoy in downtown Ottawa. Freeland responded by referencing remarks made by a colleague about how it felt as a Black Canadian to see swastikas and Confederate flags.
The protesters, and I guess we should be more accurate, the trucks have been parked outside in Ottawa for almost a week now. And instead of presenting a plan, which is what I think a lot of people in this country would like to see, instead of presenting a plan to work with the people who are out there to help them feel that they've been listened to, the Prime Minister is threatening Canadians with more vaccine mandates for interprovincial trade and travel. This is not helpful. So can the Prime Minister please tell Canadians what role he feels the government can play and what they can do to help solve the impasse?
I heard very clearly my colleague from Hull, Elmer, who explained what it means for a Black Canadian to see swastikas and the Confederate flag displayed at a protest in our nation's capital. He told us how that horrible emblem makes Black Canadians question who else among us would infringe on their equality and freedom. His words are a powerful reminder that every member of this House has a responsibility to speak out against a movement that tolerates such symbols.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, that, I'm afraid, is classic gaslighting, and it's very disappointing to see the Deputy Leader do that when we are in the middle of what's going on the streets right now in Ottawa.
Bridge City News has a team in Ottawa which has been covering the events around the Freedom Convoy. Truckers say they're not leaving until all of the COVID-19 mandates are lifted. BCN's David Craig had a chance to chat with a supporter of the rally in our nation's capital. Dustin Weeb says it's incredible how the rally has brought everyone together, including those from Quebec.
So there was a group of about 10 guys from Quebec that came to the truck, and I guess maybe one of them knew English, the rest were all French. And I told them when I saw Quebec was in trouble, that's when I jumped in my truck, because in Quebec you can't get groceries, you can't get a organ transplant, you can't go to the pharmacy if you don't have the vaccine. And when we saw that Quebec was in trouble, if Quebec goes down, Canada goes down. And these guys were getting hit hard. These guys, the one guy said, "Thank you, thank you, thank you." And they walked about 50 feet away, and then once the translation got back to French to the 10, they came in, they ran back to the truck and they started kissing me on the hand, and they said, "Please, please, please don't leave." And they said, "I will never, ever be a separatist again because of you. I will buy a Canadian flag the first time. I have never owned a Canadian flag, but because of you, I am Canadian today."
The GoFundMe initiative in support of the Freedom Convoy has raised just over $10 million, but the funds have been frozen pending an internal review by GoFundMe. Now, the group behind the Freedom Convoy has hired the Justice Centre for Constitutional Freedoms to help get the money released. Joining us now to discuss this is the president of the Justice Centre, John Carpe, who joins us now from Calgary. John, any chance the funds will be released soon?
We are getting closer by the day. There are a lot of people putting pressure on GoFundMe to not release the funds. And so GoFundMe placed a very, very high level of scrutiny, higher than normal. And that's okay. But the lawyers have been working with GoFundMe, and we expect that the funds will be released so that the truckers can buy their fuel and groceries and food and accommodation and other expenses that are necessary.
Did GoFundMe explain why specifically they haven't released the funds for the truckers?
Well, initially, we were told that the money could be released only for fuel or gasoline and nothing else. And so we've clarified that to let GoFundMe know that the intention of the donors is to support the Freedom Convoy broadly. So that would include other expenses. I'm told that the truckers have recently brought in a whole bunch of shovels, and they're busy shoveling snow, shoveling the sidewalks in Ottawa as a service to the people there. So that would be there's all kinds of expenses when you have that many people who currently they're not working, they're not earning money, and so we've clarified with GoFundMe that the funds are not for gasoline only, but to support the truckers more broadly.
Okay, thanks so much, John. That was John Carpe, president of the Justice Centre for Constitutional Freedoms, joining us from Calgary. You know, not a bad weekend is shaping up so far here in southwestern Alberta, as we'll be seeing more of those plus value temperatures. Jeanette Rocher is here with an early look at the forecast. Jeanette, we could hit double digits by Sunday.
Yes, I'm very happy to report, Hal, that, we should be seeing double digits by a Sunday and possibly some weather up into the teens by next week. But before we get there, we might have to contend with a bit of precipitation on Saturday in the form of flurries or showers, a high of 8 degrees on a Saturday before we get to those warmer temperatures. And of course, that also means those Chinook winds. We could have 80 kilometer per hour wind gusts this evening and up to 70 K gusts tomorrow. I'll have more details about that coming up later on in the newscast.
Great. Thanks so much, Jeanette. The highway at the Coutts border crossing ran into another short-lived blockade as truckers have been protesting government mandates there. The area has since reopened.
Last night, protesters had moved vehicles off to the side of the road down at the town of Coutts and began to allow the flow of traffic. We escorted some vehicles south through the protest zone in Coutts, and then we were interrupted when a new blockade took place, which is just behind me here at the intersection of Highway 4 and Highway 501. Protest vehicles, commercial vehicles, blocked off the southbound lanes of traffic right here behind me.
Well, I've just come through this morning, so I haven't been waiting too long on this side. There's a quick few questions, and that was it, really. Yeah, but I did get stuck on Montana side for about 4 days. Then I had to divert to Roseville, shoot back into Calgary. And then, here I am again, doing the same thing again, I guess. It feels great, because I need to work. I got bills to pay, right? I mean, I understand you guys are protesting. That's great, just stick to a side and let us just, go for it. No hard feelings. I'm with them. I understand. Unfortunately, I can't stand and protest. I've got to work. I've got to pay bills, right? So I've got a small family.
I've been here since 1 o'clock, slept here overnight, and I'm planning to stay here till I have to. I'll be here for days. I'm here to support the protest against mandates. Absolutely. Free choice and equal rights for all Albertans and all Canadians and for all people. That's what we believe in.
You got truckers down here, you got farmers down here, you got sheet metal workers, you got professionally employed guys, you've got oil and gas workers down here. 80 guys probably slept on the highway last night. None of us are getting paid. And although the police here are very nice and we're all polite and we're respectful, they have a job to do. They can't exactly tell their superiors, I'm not coming down here. And I get that. But at the end of the day, they're going to have to pick a side.
A spokesperson with the RCMP say there is no way to predict when the protest at the Coutts border crossing will come to an end. Demonstrators began parking their rigs near the crossing last Saturday in solidarity with the truckers in Ottawa who were part of the Freedom Convoy. The impasse has stranded travelers and cross-border truckers for days, which has impacted the delivery of millions of dollars in trade. Innisfail Sylvan Lake, Alberta MLA Devin Dreeshen says he wants to see the COVID-19 vaccine mandate scrapped. MLA Devin Dreeshen joins us now from Innisfail, Alberta. Devin, why do you want to see the vaccine mandate come to an end?
Well, it's something that I've heard from my constituents in Innisfail, Sylvan Lake for a long time, that when it comes to COVID restrictions and COVID mandates, that their time has come and gone. And especially when you look at the restriction exemption program, that was brought in to boost vaccination rates months ago. And pretty much everybody in Alberta that wants to get vaccinated has been vaccinated. So really the time for that program to end is now. And I'll take the COVID cabinet committee at their word that they are looking at early next week to make that final decision to hopefully scrap that program altogether.
Now, you feel that many MLAs feel the same way. How can you really convince Premier Kenney that it's time?
Well, not to go into our caucus meetings, but it's been pretty vocal for quite some time that when it comes to the vaccine mandates and so many COVID restrictions, that really we wanted to see evidence of why they were being brought in. And then at the end of the day, we wanted to make sure that Albertans would buy into it, that they would actually see that this is actually something that would benefit them and to keep our healthcare system safe. And one of the greatest things that I heard from a constituent was when you look at not just Alberta, but other provinces, when it comes to the statement, we don't want to overwhelm our healthcare system, that was always the root cause and the root kind of genesis of all the government decisions during COVID. But there was never really a thought of how can we increase capacity.
Now, you're also calling on the federal government to remove restrictions on truckers at the Canada-US border. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, something that we've seen the Prime Minister, I think, inflame a lot of tensions in Ottawa. Again, by bringing in the mandate in the first place, something for over 2 years, the supply chain and the border was always viewed as something that was critical, and that it should never be, there should be no restriction of the flow of goods going across the Canada-US border. And to bring in a vaccine mandate for truckers is something that I think is foolhardy, makes no sense, and it should be something that the federal government reverses and work with Washington to make sure that the U.S. also removes their mandate as well.
Thanks, Devin. That was Innisfail-Sylvan Lake MLA and former Agriculture Minister Devin Dreeshen. Supporters with large trucks and farm vehicles drove to Manitoba's legislature in a protest against COVID-19 restrictions. Large Canadian and U.S. flags were flying from some trucks, and there were signs calling for an end to the vaccine mandates. Some counter-protesters were there as well. Now, one trucker supporter says enough is enough, and the end goal should be ending the COVID-19 mandates as quickly as possible.
Well, the main goal is to end the mandates. Like, we haven't had a life for over 2 years now, and it just never ends. They keep coming up with more restrictions, and it's not so much just the vaccine like so many people think. The fact is, the truck drivers have enormous restrictions now just across the border. They want you to isolate for 14 days on each side. So how are you ever supposed to pick up your loads and deliver your loads with all those restrictions on? You can't. There's no way you can do it.
Legislature security in Winnipeg blocked the driveway entrances to the grounds by using concrete barriers and at one spot, a large wall of snow. The Freedom Convoy is having an effect on people of all ages, including high school students. Earlier today, students at Lethbridge Collegiate Institute walked out of classes to hold signs in objection to mandates and restrictions and to show their support for the larger scale protests taking place all across the country.
I'm doing this so that everyone here can get their voices heard. This isn't anti-mask, this is pro-choice. If you want to wear a mask and get vaccinated, I 100% support you, and anyone who doesn't and is getting forced into it, I think is disgusting, and we should all get the choice to choose for ourselves.
I'm one of the supporters of the truckers, as well as a couple of my friends here, and I think it's really great kind of just that we're a small group, but we're here for everybody that wants to do what we want to do. And if you want to get vaccinated, if you want to wear a mask, then that's you, go you. I'm not going to be against you. That's your choice, but again, it's my choice not to.
Being proactive in our community, and with that strong wind too. You know, it's been exactly 102 days since Blaine Higgin was elected mayor of Lethbridge. Since being sworn in, Higgin says it's been a great honor and privilege to serve as mayor. He says the biggest accomplishment so far has been creating the Gateway to Opportunity 2022 action plan with the help of City Council.
Everything we seem to discuss on a regular basis falls back into that action plan, and it's great. So we try to fit any questions or any comments or concerns or suggestions that come in from the community. We take those and how does it fit in with that action plan, and all of it does. And so it's, I think, sitting together and working out that action plan, and it took a long time. We were thinking maybe we'd have it out in early December, later in December, and then finally in January we brought that out. It's we wanted to make sure that it was the best that we could put out there.
Mayor Higgins says they want to continue conversations with different groups and ministries and work on items that weren't able to get done within the first 100 days in office. 2 Lethbridge College programs are getting a financial boost from a local credit union to support students. First Choice Savings and Credit Union is investing $55,000 in various agriculture programs. The chair of Agriculture Science explains what the money will be going towards.
It's going to help students that are coming into our program, students that are graduating and going into the bachelor degree. And so it's not like it's one big chunk and helps just one student. So it's going to be able to offset some books and computer supplies, that sort of thing, for 25 different students. So it's really good. It has a great impact.
Cook says this is the first time First Choice has invested in these programs. Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe says his government will soon end COVID-19 measures in his province. He says they restrict people's rights and freedoms, and it's time for life to return to normal. Moe says it's impossible to eliminate COVID-19, so society must learn to live with the virus through the use of vaccines, antiviral treatments, and testing. Another Freedom Convoy demonstration is planned at the Saskatchewan Legislature, with protesters saying they will stay until public health restrictions are lifted.
So what does this all mean for us? It means COVID is not ending, but government restrictions on your rights and freedoms, those will be ending, and ending very soon. So keep doing what you were doing. Go get vaccinated if you have not yet. While it may not prevent you from getting COVID, it will significantly protect you against getting sick. Use rapid tests from time to time. Stay home if you're not feeling well. Travel, go to work, have dinner with your friends, go to the movies, go to your kids' games, most importantly. You should do all of these things without constantly assessing if your every activity is absolutely necessary. What's necessary is your freedom. What's necessary is getting your life back to normal.
The third day of the torch relay for the Beijing Winter Olympics was held in a closed arena by the Grand Canal in a district on the city's east side. The event took place without public spectators. Around 1,200 torchbearers have carried the torch along the way to the Beijing Games. Chinese President Xi Jinping declared the Olympic Winter Games open today. Athletes from more than 90 nations marched into Beijing's National Stadium. Canada's fielding a team of 215 athletes. The 24th Winter Olympics will run until February the 20th. Well, it was good to see a lot of the snow melting here in Lethbridge, and the warmer weather is remaining. Complete weather details are coming up. It was so nice to enjoy the milder temperatures again here in southwestern Alberta, and not a bad weekend is shaping up either. Jeanette Rocher is here now with a complete look at the weather forecast. Jeanette, the Chinook has arrived, and so have those strong Chinook winds.
Yeah, that's right, Hal. We're going to be feeling them tonight as well. 80 kilometer per hour wind gusts this evening, up to 70 per hour on a Saturday. Saturday also, we could be seeing a 30% chance of showers or flurries, high of 8 degrees. Into Sunday, that's where we get into those double digits, high of 11 degrees, lots of sunshine. Sunny skies on Monday with a high of 12 degrees, 8 degrees on Tuesday under sunshine as well. And then back up to double digits on Wednesday with a high of 11, and then all the way up to 14 degrees on Thursday. So that's kind of unbelievable. We are going to be seeing those mid-teen temperatures in February, where the average high for this time of year is actually 0. Average low is -12. 17 was where we were at back in 1992. That was the highest on record. Lowest was -31 back in 1989. 8 a.m. is when the sun rose this morning, and our sun set this evening at 5:31 p.m., giving us exactly 9 hours and 31 hours. 9 hours and 31 minutes, that is, of daylight, so just a little over 9.5 hours. Victoria tomorrow, mix of sun and cloud, 8 degrees, 7 degrees in Vancouver. Edmonton, looking at a 60% chance of snow tomorrow, 3 degrees the high and 6 degrees the high. And Calgary could see a bit of precipitation there as well. In Saskatoon, -15 the high, 2 centimeters of snow expected there. Regina, -5, looking at some snow. -15 in Winnipeg, and up to 10 to 15, 5 to 10 centimeters, that is, of snow in Winnipeg, and looking at some wind gusts there as well. Toronto, sunshine tomorrow, -8 the high, -14 in Ottawa. -12, though, in Montreal with a mix of sun and cloud, looking at possible frostbite warnings. Wind chill also in most of those cities as well. As we look to the East Coast, this is where we're seeing a lot of precipitation. We got snow happening in Fredericton, -8 the high there. Halifax, looking at freezing rain and flurries, -5 the high. Charlottetown looking at flurries as well. -4 the high, and 9 degrees the high in St. John's, Newfoundland, with a rainfall warning in effect, looking at 30 to 40 millimeters of rain there. So there you have it. That is your forecast for Saturday.
The Canadian economy lost 200,000 jobs last month due to the Omicron wave of the pandemic, but economists say they expect the labor market to bounce back. Stats Canada says the biggest monthly loss in jobs in a year pushed the unemployment rate up from 6 to 6.5%. It says food services and hotels were among the hardest hit sectors. But with restrictions relaxing, economists say they do not expect the impacts of Omicron to extend beyond the first quarter of this year. Stellantis is recalling close to 202,000 Ram heavy-duty pickups and chassis cabs across North America due to a problem with windshield wipers. The recall covers certain Ram 2500 and 3500 pickups, along with some 3500, 4500, and 5500 chassis cabs from 2019 and 2020. U.S. safety regulators say the wiper arms may loosen, causing a malfunction that can reduce visibility. Amazon's profits nearly doubled in the fourth quarter. This came even as the online behemoth contends with surging costs tied to a snarled supply chain and labor shortages. The Seattle-based company also raised its annual Prime membership fee from $119 to $139. The company reported a profit of $14.3 billion, or $27.75 per share, for the three-month period ending December 31st. Now, here's a look at today's markets. The TSX was up 177 points on the day to 21,271. The Dow was down 21 points to 35,089. The S&P 500 was up 23 points to 4,500, and the Nasdaq was up 219 on the day to 14,098. West Texas Intermediate Oil was up 204 to 92.31 US per barrel. Natural gas was down 32 cents to 4.57 US. Gold was up 342 to 1808.28 US an ounce, and silver was up 9 cents to 22.52 US an ounce. Feed wheat is at $12.11 per bushel, barley's at $9.47, canola's at $23.19, and corn is at $10.80 per bushel. Live cattle were up 45 cents to 142.05. Feeder cattle were down 63 cents to 166.10, and lean hogs were up 58 cents to 87.03. The Canadian dollar was down slightly over the past 24 hours to 78.33 US. Recapping one of our top stories, organizers of the Freedom Convoy in Ottawa have hired the Justice Centre for Constitutional Freedoms to get the more than $10 million released that has been frozen from their GoFundMe fundraiser. GoFundMe says they're doing an internal review of the money. Tamara Litch with the Freedom Convoy says the funds, once released, will help support the truckers participating in the Ottawa protest with things like food, fuel, and lodgings. We have some parenting tips for you shortly as we interview pastor and author Tim Alba, who wrote the book, Well Done, Mom and Dad. That informative interview is on deck. But first, here's a look what's happening in and around your community.
Here's today's Bridge City News Community Calendar. Discover more about the Blackfoot culture as they celebrate the 22nd Annual International Peace Powwow and Festival taking place February 19th and 20th at the NMAC Centre in Lethbridge. Experience Indigenous music and dance and the spectacular Grand Entry. Plus, find unique items at the craft fair. Tickets available now at the NMAC Centre. Current COVID rules will apply. For more information, visit the International Peace Powwow and Festival Facebook page. On Saturday, February 26th, Streets Alive Mission is hosting their Coldest Night of the Year fundraiser. This family-friendly walk is to raise money to help those who are experiencing hurt, hunger, and homelessness. To register, donate, and to find out more about this event and Streets Alive Mission, visit cnoy.org/Lethbridge. And that's your Bridge City News Community Calendar.
Parenting is a challenge for each and every one of us who has kids, and it's always helpful to get some advice from someone who's managed to do parenting quite well. That's what we want to do today with our guest, Tim Alba, a former pastor and a longtime corporate executive. He's the author of the book, Well Done, Mom and Dad, a practical guide to turn good intentions into godly legacies, available at Amazon and at timalba.com. Tim, welcome to Bridge City News. Thanks for joining us today from Dallas, Texas.
Thank you. It's a privilege. Thank you.
Now, how would you best describe your book? Would you call it maybe a parenting guide?
Yeah, I really started out as a leadership guide for my kids because I didn't start out to write a parenting book, but I started out to writing a book for my children, to help them know how to choose well. But through that process, I began to understand that every Christian parent wants to have happy, godly kids. The question is, how do you turn those good intentions into a godly legacy? And that's where this journey took me.
Yeah, we all want our children to turn out great, but you say there's no magic formula for helping our kids be faithful. So what can we really do as parents?
Well, I really think a key is, if you will, there's a secret that doesn't need to be a secret. And how do you unlock that? Because at the end of the day, it really is trying to help your children know how to be faithful, but more importantly, want to. So to me, the secret is helping your kids learn how to want what they need to be faithful, so that they know not only, again, how to, but they want to. And for us to not look back with regrets and say, wow, I wish I would have thought of that and thought these things through when I was younger. And really, I think it comes down to, how do you unlock that? You unlock that with vivid memories that you create with your kids to inspire them to want that for themselves.
Now, there are a lot of young people leaving church these days. Why do you think this is happening? Is it strictly because of the lockdowns associated with the pandemic?
Well, I think it really comes down to more than what's happening in society. It's what's happening in the home. I mean, so many parents today want their kids to be happy, but ultimately, happiness flows out of holiness. So instead of being passive and letting society tell us what we're going to do or not do, I think really the key is to have the great offense. The best defense in the home is to have a great offense, to lead your children and to inspire them. Because at the end of the day, we have to create, again, that staying power for the kids to personalize that faith for themselves.
Now, in your book, Tim, you talk about default choices in parenting. Can you explain?
Yeah, I've really come to the place where I realize with my own kids that there's a fundamental question that I think we all have to answer as parents. And that is, will I be a default parent? And that is a parent that I prefer to be by default, or will I be a parent that my kids need me to be? And a default parent, I say, are great parents with good intentions. They definitely they want to help their children and break their habits and fix their behavior and stop their drama. But that's parenting by default. And well-intended is not well done. And the second kind of parent I talk about are well-done parents. And we also want to help our little Susie or Billy, but we break their habits by bonding with their hearts. And we fix their behavior by funneling their beliefs. And we stop that proverbial drama by shaping their dreams. It's how we go about helping our children want, again, what they need to be faithful.
So, Tim, why do you say that our job as parents is not to get our children to copy us?
Well, I think we, by default, we want our children essentially to copy us. But the problem is that's not necessarily what our kids need. I mean, my dad was a hero. He was a great man. But my kids needed something a little different. And when I finally learned to become a student of my kids and see what they needed something different. And frankly, that's what a lot of the book's exercises do, is they help us become a student of our kids to where we find out what's going to help them connect with the faith and how God created in them.
Now, you say that we are the product of our own daily choices. What kind of daily choices do we make that have really helped guide our own lives, do you think?
Well, I think we can't ever get past the basics, right? The basics of creating a home where godliness is the norm, praying, reading our Bible, etc. That's absolutely can't change. But I really think there's three things that really could help all of us. And the first is to start with ourselves. The second is love your spouse. And the third is, how do you lead your family? So it really starts with me. How am I leading myself? Because I can't lead my family well until I lead myself well. The second is, the best way for my kids to truly love God is to see their parents love each other. So it's loving my spouse. And the third, is leading my family and others, again, to want what they need to be faithful. And that's becoming that student. And it's having some practical exercises that, frankly, the book goes through. I'll give you one real quick that maybe it's called Secret Sauce. Take 26 A to Z characteristics. You pick one for each letter that's going to characterize the character of your family. You have everybody do it. It's a fantastic little exercise. And when we went through that, what I saw was each of my children choosing things that were important to them. And when you look back on it and see what happens with your children years later, you find amazing similarities, but also some amazing commonalities. You help them find faithfulness for themselves as well.
Now, in your book, you also mention that our trophies reflect our treasures. What do you mean by that exactly?
Well, I'll really start just with a story because that's what I think explains it. And that was my wife and I had 3 kids, had a tornado that came through the Dallas-Fort Worth area. My wife couldn't get home. And I finally got home. My wife called me and said, Frank, get home with the kids. I looked all over the house. And I finally found my 3 kids, all in a small little bathroom with the door shut, with the music going, having a party. And I thought, what is going on? And they were little. And what they took with them when my wife said, get only the things you need and go to that bathroom and shut the door. My daughter took her makeup and music. Makeup. Well, she's now a fashion designer. My son took his music and the Bible. He now is a musician who works at his church. My youngest son grabbed his Game Boy, and he's now a graphic designer. Even when we're little, we know to grab the things that are most important to us. The question is, are we grabbing? Are we treasuring what really matters? It happens by default. The key is, are we actually, though, making the choices that we want to treasure day after day?
Now, you encourage parents to keep investing in their kids even when they don't see the immediate results. How do we keep casting that vision?
Well, I think you have to decide up front that how you invest in your kids will not depend upon how they respond. I mean, we have to keep investing also in ways that draw their interest. It's like if you deposit $1 in a bank, after 50 years, it's worth $1.64 if it's 1%. But if you could deposit $1 every day at 10% interest, it's worth $467,000. And I just wonder if we could deposit one character investing quality in our kids every day for 50 years that draws their interest, how different would our kids look? And I think back to a time where I was trying to find a way to connect with my youngest son who just wouldn't hardly talk. And his name is Caleb. I finally found a thing that I thought he loved was Dallas Mavericks basketball tickets. And I bought a little package of those tickets, and he was so excited to go for about 3 games, and then he quit going. And I'm thinking, what are you doing? And after 3 games, he didn't care anymore. But 5 years later, when my kids did an exercise and they told me the greatest memories they had of me as a dad, on that list was Dallas Mavericks basketball tickets. A son, a teenager who didn't even care about going to the games, was one of his favorite memories because he looked back at it and said, I know that my dad was trying to invest time with me. And I tell that story and say, we all have our Dallas Mavericks basketball tickets of things that you're doing day after day. Your kids don't even give you any attention. They don't give you the satisfaction. But there are secretly treasured choices and decisions you make to invest in your kids that really do pay off. You just have to do it for the long haul.
So, Tim, what does our character have to do with our success as parents?
Well, I think character has everything to do with our success as parents. I mean, I view success as maximizing your opportunity and being faithful today. Kids desperately need parents to be what I call a character hero. That's someone who speaks character over them, instills character in them, and celebrates the character already within them. It's finding things within them that is worthy of celebration. So it really comes down to, are we going to be happy with just success? Or are we going to turn success into significance and significance into faithful children? And that's the process, because I believe God measures success not by the comparability of our accomplishments, but by the completeness of our faithfulness.
So, as both a church member and a former pastor, what do you feel is the number one need in families today?
Well, I really think it comes down to what we need to do is to inspire our children to want faithfulness. And how we go about that are doing things like, in the book, I talk about how to instill vision that they can connect with practically, and then character to back it up. And then a culture of everyday faithfulness that multiplies that vision, that character in a way that kids can connect with and create memories that they can't forget and wouldn't want to.
Now, you talk about preparing our children to be compelling when they're 33 or 43, not just compliant when they're 3 or 13. Can you explain? And how do you do that?
Yeah, again, I think it comes back to being able to instill in them the things that connect with them. In the book, I talk about a couple of character blockers, things that you can, that if you do, your kids will forgive almost anything but those. It's a pattern of hypocrisy and a failure to try. But there's also things you can do to intentionally plant seeds of faithfulness in your children. And in the book, I just try to provide multiple exercises to where kids can really connect with. Because how do you take these concepts and make them real? By giving kids things that they can connect with and memories that they'll never forget.
So, Tim, if readers take away one big thing from your book, what do you hope that is?
Well, I hope they don't live with regrets. I hope they look back and know that they prepared their children for what I believe is the greatest moment in all of humanity. And that is not, amazingly, the moment that we get to feel the Lord's embrace and feel him say, well done. It's when we in heaven get to see God do that with our kids. If we can prepare ourselves and our children for that moment when they embrace the Lord, and if we can somehow visualize that, that changes everything. It helps us want to help them be faithful, even in the tough times.
Do you think potentially that maybe grandparents can use this as a practical guide as well, your book, not just parents? Maybe help the grandkids along?
Well, actually, some of the folks that have enjoyed this the most are grandparents. I'm one right now. And what I've seen is grandparents have told me how it changes things because they're now doing the things that really make a difference. So I've learned that as my kids now have their own children, frankly, I'm able to be a better influence on not only my grandchildren, but also my children. Because frankly, now they're more willing to listen. So it's not a matter of your age or stage, it's a matter of your willingness to pass down the godly legacy.
Now, Tim, you're offering some free resources as well. Why don't you talk a bit about that?
Well, a couple of things. One is on timalba.com, there's a free printable workbook that's available for anybody. It's not just to read the book, it's actually to practice those exercises, so it can be very, very helpful for anybody. And the second thing is as well on timalba.com, is any pastor, any minister, US or Canada, can get a free book simply by asking. There's no strings attached, no credit card, nothing. I just want to honor those ministers who have given their life to Christ. And it's just a way to bless the men and women that have served as I have in ministry full time. So thank you for that.
Tim Alba is the author of Well Done, Mom and Dad, a practical guide to turn good intentions into godly legacies, available on Amazon or timalba.com. Tim, thanks for joining us today from Dallas, Texas.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Well, here in southern Alberta, science and agriculture go hand in hand. Today, we're talking with an expert in remote sensing and farming. Now, this goes far beyond your TV remote control and your grandparents' grain farm. Today, we have Dr. Craig Coburn joining us from the University of Lethbridge. Dr. Coburn's work focuses on the aspects of remote sensing science. All of the scientific research helps growers and researchers better understand agricultural crops and other biological systems. Dr. Craig Coburn, thank you so much for joining us today. So great to have you on.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So first off, for those of us who maybe don't know or don't quite understand, start off by explaining exactly what remote sensing is.
Well, remote sensing is what we're doing right now. So we're watching, a television screen with our eyes. So we're viewing this. So if we think about taking that same kind of technology and putting it up into space, then we are using satellites to view the Earth's surface and to get information from the data that we derive.
Wow, that's so cool. And we don't really think about it because we just use it every day, don't we? So is your work and research really a high-tech bird's eye view of a farmer's field? Maybe explain that a little bit.
Oh, absolutely. Much of the research that we do is charged with answering fundamental questions, like things like how are the plants growing? How is that crop developing? What could we expect in terms of yield? Those are sorts of really basic questions that people have asked for a long time. And again, from space, we're now able to collect data that can help us derive that piece of information that's needed in modern agriculture.
So was the study of remote sensing then just kind of a logical step of a transition for you?
It's one of the areas in geography that involves geospatial technology. So you'll notice that on cell phones and other things, you can't 10, 15 years ago, I used to have a hard time telling people what I did. Now I just tell them I make Google Earth work and they understand. But when I was doing my graduate degrees, I used to just tell people I made maps for a living, and that would stop them from imagining all kinds of crazy things that I might do. We're geographers, we make maps. These are the technologies that we now use in order to provide information to help manage and monitor our Earth.
Well, that's so cool. So how long has remote sensing technology been around?
Well, we've had active space programs since 1972. We've always wanted to look at ourselves from above. I mean, it's just a human thing. Whenever you can get on top of a hill and look over where you were, it satisfies a human need to know. So it's an interesting thing. As soon as we were able to get airborne, one of the first things we put in a plane was a camera. We wanted to see it. And before we had planes, we had balloons, and we used to put cameras outside the balloons and take the same photograph that every farm I've ever been at has, usually hanging in the dining room, that shows you your farm. That we've been doing that since the 1850s. So these are the kinds of things that just people find it fascinating. They find these things really interesting. But yeah, we've been at it digitally monitoring Earth since the early 70s.
Okay, awesome. So what are some of the ways that farmers in southern Alberta are using this technology to enhance their farming?
Well, we can use it for really basic things like just trying to tell health and condition is probably the biggest one. So crop health and condition we use really typically, and it's not easily done, but it's reasonably straightforward. Let's put it that way, because some of this gets a little bit high tech, and I don't think people want me to go off and deliver that particular lecture. But we can also do things weed detection. That's a new and upcoming area of interest. There's all sorts of modeling that goes on that requires some kind of geospatial input. So that might be on the government side, where they're trying to model the bigger picture of how agriculture is doing across the country. So at every level, right from the producer all the way up to those folks in governments that are trying to organize how the whole system works, we are the people that are providing the data.
Well, that's really fascinating. So what have been some of the limitations in the past with this technology?
I think the number one biggest limitation was we just weren't ready for. We didn't have the computing power. We didn't have the ability to visualize it. We couldn't get it to a producer for free, which we can do now. There were a lot of limitations. I mean, technologically, we still suffer that we cannot download all of the data that we can collect from space right now. So we're always pushing the boundary in terms of what we can do. So those were the limitations. Again, 10, 15 years ago, I always tell my students that in 1972, we barely had color television, and we didn't have a video game. My students have a hard time conceptualizing this, and yet we were imaging from space. We were doing the entire globe. So it's difficult for people to sort of capture that. But when you want to bring it right down to people and having these things being utilized in a daily way to manage a modern farm, then it's all about getting data, and it's all about making it usable. And so we've had to break down any number of barriers. There's lots of companies, some of them are in Lethbridge, many are in Western Canada generally, that are involved with with taking those pieces of data and putting them into digestible bits that farmers are then able to utilize operationally.
Well, that's a really good way to describe it, sort of in a layman's terms. And how do they use it? It's amazing because you're talking about outer space, pinpointing down on a little farmer's crops there. So it really is amazing to me. How is it specifically helping them exactly?
Well, imagine the scenario where you've got, say, the ability to vary the rate of fertilizer application, or you might have some other variable rate technology. One of the things that you need as an input on the farm side is where would we do the application? So if we were going to vary the fertilizer, so if if we can reduce input costs and we can get the same growth response from the plant, then we can go ahead and increase productivity and also put money on the bottom line. So when we do those sorts of things, then again, we've got satellites above, they've got giant telescopes, so they see a long way, and we can get it right down to some pretty small areas. And there's other technologies as well. I mean, we're not, there's unmanned aerial vehicles and other things that can be even closer to the target. But from space itself, then we're able to look down on those small spots on Earth, and we're able to take and collect the information that we get there. So we've got, in essence, what the color of the plant is. And then we will be able to do those kinds of variable rate pieces. So we give the information that allows the technology to operate.
That is very, very cool. Does this technology have applications beyond farming?
It's an interesting thing. Oftentimes my students get a little bit excited about it when I list off the number of application areas that are governed by remote sensing. So even if you just start by turning on the satellite, if you click on the satellite button on Google Maps, that's us. So every time you do any of those things, so it could be natural resource driven. So it could be agriculture, it could be forestry, it could be mining. Those folks are using it. It could be, say, for example, we want to watch urban growth. Where are people on this planet? Yeah, we do that. If you want to know how it is that we have information that lets us understand our impact on our planet generally, deforestation, global warming things, are the ice caps really disappearing? Well, of course, we watch that every day. These are all climate variables. We're monitoring CO2 in the atmosphere. These are all, there's a list that would go on. We would waste the entire show just covering the list of contributions that remote sensing makes to the monitoring of Earth. But we used to be in the background, right? So we used to be the people that enabled, we did the science and technology that enabled those data pieces to get pushed forward. Now people are starting to ask questions like yourself about, well, what exactly are you doing? I've talked to any number of producers and they say things like, you're spying on me. And I always say, well, yeah, but we have been since I was a child. This isn't new. This is, it's just that we're now making it useful. And you now know that, there's a large remote sensing group at the University of Lethbridge. There's 5 of us that are in the group. That's an unusual collection across Canada. We're one of Canada's largest remote sensing groups. And those are the things that we're interested in. So it's, again, if you name it, we're probably involved. If it involves geographical things across our planet, then we're there.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Now, maybe describe your development of a 6-band system, or better yet, tell us what the bands are, and then maybe about the development that you've made.
Oh, so I do remote sensing fundamental work. So I do remote sensing physics. That's my specialty. So I build things. That's the way I shorten it up. So if scientists can't build their own tools, then they're forced to ask the questions that those who do build the tools ask. I want to ask my own questions. And in order to do that, I have to literally get in and do a little bit of electronics. I do know how to weld, so I build giant robots and things. But I started building camera systems. So these were camera systems that were meant to be inexpensive. I developed, I don't even know how many now. It's quite a few, but if there's an imaging system out there, I've probably tinkered with it in the lab. So and then we would design those things. So the 6-band system that I developed, that was a long time ago, and it was developed specifically around questions to deal with the remote sensing of vegetation. So it's vegetation. If you don't have a farm, you don't eat and you die. So it's really important that we get high quality information about those about plants generally, but about crops specifically. So in order to do that, I developed a system that had 6 spectral bands. So we're going to place bands in areas where we understand from our biologist colleagues exactly what that plant is doing at that point in terms of how it's reacting to light. So that might be looking at how is it photosynthesizing? Is the chlorophyll active? Those kinds of things. Then we can tell from that, we can go, look, if we see that it's photosynthesizing this much, then we get this is what color it is. But our vision of color extends past what people can see in the visible light range, and we extend off into the infrared. And those are the tricky bits to sense, but we can do that kind of work.
Okay, so Dr. Coburn, this is all like super exciting, but maybe talk about what's the latest and greatest, most groundbreaking stuff that you've done in the past week or month, say.
Well, Jeanette, the most important thing that we've done, and probably for me anyways, in the last few weeks, is the University of Lethbridge with me at the helm was part of the team that was doing the calibration for United States Geological Survey and NASA's latest satellite mission. So Landsat's the most important Earth observation satellite system to date, and we were part of a global team that was out doing the calibration of that sensor.
Okay, so what exactly does that mean? What do you do? What did it do?
Well, the fun part there was when you get a phone call from NASA, you usually pick up. And when they ask if you'd be willing to join the global team to do some calibration for their latest $1 billion satellite effort, you also say yes. And then it was mostly about finding a willing, in this case, a willing rancher down just south of Bow Island who has a grazing lease, and we thank him very much for the opportunity to go out and wander around in this marvelous area of reasonably native prairie. And it's a big, wide area. It's very consistent in terms of its tone. And we just happen to be, so we do research in that area, and we just happen to be in exactly the right spot to help the global calibration effort. So they were putting their current satellite and the next satellite were flying on the same path, which is almost never done. It only was going to happen for a few weeks, and we did happen to get a nice sunny day in southern Alberta to go out and provide data to the United States Geological Survey as well as NASA in order that they can calibrate that sensor.
That's amazing. I'm just curious, when you're researching the land and you contact these ranchers and farmers, what's their reaction?
They oftentimes are confused. They don't realize that we're watching, and it's not for the reasons they think. This is part of a global effort that's been going on since the 70s just to monitor our planet. And I think it's incredibly cool. But we're able to convince them, of course, because a lot of people in the general public don't really understand that this is happening every day, all the time. But we're not up there trying to see if you're doing something nefarious. We're just trying to see what our impact on the world is. So and those are the interesting pieces. But oftentimes they wonder, like, you can see me. I remember when I've contacted several folk, especially in the ranching side, and I'll ask them about their land, and I'll say, well, I need to get over into this area. I need to be in the southwest corner of this particular field at this time. And I see that there's a power line and that you've got a pen over here. And they're like, how are you doing this? And I'm like, look, I'm in Lethbridge, but I'm actually on the government website. I'm able to call it up. Right? I can just zoom in and I can see where that area is. And I can see there's a power line, and I'm going to be at the second power transmission tower. And I need to be in about halfway into your field. Is that okay? And they oftentimes are quite surprised that we can get that kind of detail from space. And I'm always on the other side, because for us, those of us that do the research, we always forget that people don't know that we do this. So there's always this very interesting little moment where they realize that we know, and we realize that they don't know. And then we come to a meeting in the middle somewhere, and we have to tell them that this is okay. This is how we monitor the entire planet. You're not special. We're not even interested in you. We're just going to go out, have a look at what we can see.
Amazing. And Dr. Coburn, if people want to learn more about your work or this technology, where can they look?
University of Lethbridge does have a website. I've got a certain amount of stuff that's up there. I am the department chair, so you can always find me. I'm relatively easy to find. a lot of our work, of course, is published, and those things are all sitting in the public domain, so they're available for people to read. If you need the Coles Notes version of it because it's a little long and it gets a bit boring, then you're always welcome to send me an email, and I'll try to respond to as many questions as we would get.
Awesome. Dr. Craig Coburn, thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate hearing about all the great research taking place at the University of Lethbridge, as always.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Absolutely. I'm Jeanette Roche on behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News. Thanks for watching.